My stepdaughter was the perfect angel until I caught her deleting my wedding invites. They say blood is thicker than water, but in a blended family, water can easily drown you if you aren't paying close attention. For the past 2 years, I genuinely believed I was the luckiest upcoming stepmother in the entire world. My fiancé David's 18-year-old daughter, Maya, wasn't just accepting of our relationship, she was quite literally my biggest cheerleader. While most teenage girls would understandably resent a new woman entering their father's life and changing the household routines, Maya went out of her way to make me feel welcome. She volunteered to manage our digital RSVP portal, organize the guest lists, and coordinate the initial details with our catering vendors for our backyard estate wedding. She was by all accounts a perfect angel. But 3 weeks before the big day, a single phone call exposed a calculated, cold-blooded narrative strategy that completely shattered my trust and revealed the terrifying lengths my sweet stepdaughter was willing to go to delete me from her father's life permanently. When David and I first got engaged after 2 years of dating, my absolute biggest fear was how Maya would react. Her biological mother had walked out on them when Maya was just a toddler, leaving David to raise her entirely on his own in their Craftsman home in Virginia. Because of that, they had an incredibly tight, almost unbreakable bond. I knew entering that dynamic would be like walking through an emotional minefield, so I vowed never to try and replace her mother. I wanted to be a supportive adult in her corner, not an authority figure trying to dictate her life. To my absolute shock, Maya made the transition feel completely effortless. The day David proposed, she hugged me with tears in her eyes and told me that her dad deserved to be this happy, welcoming me into the family with open arms. As a professional event planner, my daily schedule was incredibly chaotic. When the organization for our own wedding reached its absolute peak, Maya stepped in with pure, unadulterated enthusiasm. She sat at the kitchen island one evening, pushed her laptop toward me, and offered to handle the digital invitations and the master RSVP dashboard. She told me that since I was drowning in floral arrangements and seating charts, she wanted to take that massive weight off my shoulders to gain some productive experience before her college semester started. David looked at her with his eyes brimming with pride, telling me how lucky we were to have her. I smiled, feeling a profound sense of relief, and handed her the master login credentials to our wedding website dashboard. For the first month, her assistance was completely flawless. Every single night at dinner, she would give us structured, cheerful updates about who had replied. She would tell us the exact head counts, confirm that the caterers were locked in, and laugh about how David's childhood friends from California had been the very first to RSVP yes. She was so organized, so consistently helpful, and so utterly charming that I completely let my guard down. I didn't double-check a single piece of her work because there was absolutely no reason to doubt her. She was our perfect helper. But a mask can only stay on for so long before the real motives underneath begin to force their way to the surface. The turning point happened on a random Tuesday afternoon while I was sitting at my office desk. My phone lit up with a call from Marcus, David's longtime boss and closest personal mentor. Marcus was a man who had practically funded David's first construction truck decades ago, and was supposed to give a highly anticipated toast at our upcoming rehearsal dinner. When I answered, Marcus's tone sounded incredibly strained, awkward, and quiet. He told me he didn't want to make things uncomfortable, but since the wedding was only 3 weeks away and he hadn't seen a formal schedule, he assumed the guest count had been downsized due to the backyard space limitations. He said he completely understood if they didn't make the final cut, but just wanted to send his love to David. I dropped my pen, my heart completely freezing in my chest. I told him he was the very first name on our VIP list and that Maya had sent the digital invitations out weeks ago. Marcus paused, sounding genuinely confused, and told me he checked his inbox daily and had never received a single email. The moment I hung up, a cold sweat broke out across my neck. I immediately logged into our wedding website dashboard from my phone and scrolled down to Marcus's name. According to the system, the invitation had been sent to his exact email address weeks prior, but his response was manually logged into the system as declined due to a travel conflict. My mind began to race at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Marcus had just told me he never even saw the invite, so why would the system say he declined it? A heavy feeling of dread settled in my stomach, and I decided to call another guest on the list, David's maternal aunt, Clara, who lived just 2 hours away. When she answered, her voice was incredibly distant and cold. When I asked her if she was still planning to attend, she sighed deeply and told me she had received an automated system email stating the guest count had been downsized due to zoning issues and that her seat had been canceled. She said she was too hurt to bother David about it. Downsized and canceled were words I had never authorized. My hands began to shake as I stared at my phone screen. Someone was systematically altering our entire guest list, weeding out the specific people who mattered most to David's history and life, and only one other person had the password to that administrative dashboard. I came home that night feeling physically sick to my stomach. David was out incredibly late supervising a large concrete pour at a commercial job site, and the house was dead silent when I walked through the door. I walked directly into the home office and saw Maya's laptop sitting closed on the desk, its sleep mode light blinking slowly in the dark room. I knew that looking through her computer was a massive boundary violation, but the entire future of my marriage and my fiancé's relationship with his own family was hanging in the balance. I opened the screen And because she trusted that I would never suspect her, her browser was still completely logged into our master wedding portal. I didn't just look at the guest list. I went straight into the advanced administrator settings, the hidden system log that tracks every single mouse click, IP address, and timestamp history. As I scrolled through the digital trail from the past 3 weeks, the horrifying truth laid itself bare on the glowing screen. Maya hadn't made a technical error. She had engineered a silent, devastating execution of our wedding ceremony. The logs showed that from her laptop's specific IP address at 2 in the morning, Maya had manually intercepted Marcus's invitation, changed his status to declined, and blocked the system from sending his email address any further updates. 2 days before that, she had manually typed out and sent a custom, unauthorized email to David's Aunt Clara, falsely claiming the venue had cut its capacity limits and revoking her invitation entirely. In total, over 20 critical VIP guests, David's lifelong friends, his closest business partners, and his extended relatives, had been quietly deleted, blocked, or sent fake cancellation notices. But the final discovery was the one that hit me the hardest. Tucked away in the system was a drafted, scheduled mass email set to go out to our entire remaining guest list, exactly 48 hours before the wedding took place. The draft read that due to unexpected personal circumstances between David and Lauren, the ceremony had been indefinitely postponed, requesting everyone to respect our privacy during this difficult time. She wasn't just messing with the guest list, she was planning to completely humiliate me and force a cancellation of the wedding at the very last second, making it look like a sudden, volatile breakup so that nobody would ever suspect her involvement. I heard a soft sound behind me and gasped, slamming the laptop screen halfway down. Maya was standing directly in the doorway of the dark office. The soft, ambient glow of the desk lamp illuminated her face, but the sweet, innocent teenage expression I had grown accustomed to was entirely gone. Her eyes were cold, calculating, and completely detached as she asked me if I was looking for something. I asked her how she could do this, pointing at the screen, my voice trembling with a mixture of shock and intense anger. I demanded to know why she was deleting David's family and why she had drafted an email claiming our wedding was canceled. Maya didn't cry and she didn't panic. She walked into the room slowly, leaning against the edge of the bookshelf with her arms crossed, looking at me with a terrifying calmness. She told me the wedding deserved to be canceled, asking if I really thought I could just walk into their home with my perfect planning binders and take her father away from her. She said that for 5 years it had been just her and her dad against the world, and that he had never missed a single game or a single dinner until I showed up and changed everything. I told her that I had never tried to come between them and that there was more than enough room in his heart for both of us, but she snapped back with a quiet, venomous rage. She told me that once the marriage happened, I would become his primary family, and she would just become the daughter who visits on holidays, and she refused to let herself be demoted in her own home. When I asked her if she realized how much it would break David's heart to stand in an empty backyard, thinking his own family had abandoned him, she offered a chilling, triumphant smile. She whispered that he would never blame her. He would simply blame the stress of the chaotic planning. And when the wedding collapsed, he would turn right back to his daughter for comfort, keeping their old life completely intact. Before I could even process the psychological weight of her admission, the heavy thud of work boots echoed from the mudroom down the hall. The front door opened and David's voice called out through the house, asking why the lights were still on and if everything was okay. Maya's eyes instantly widened in a flash of pure panic. The cold, calculated manipulator vanished in a split second, and she immediately began rubbing her eyes frantically, trying to force tears so she could run out to the hallway and paint herself as the victim of an attack. I stood up immediately, physically blocking her path to the door, and called out firmly for David to come into the office right now. David walked into the room, wiping construction dust from his hands, looking completely bewildered by the suffocating atmosphere and his daughter's sudden tears. I told him to look at the laptop screen, clicking open the administrator logs, and told him to read the system timestamps himself without me saying a word. For 10 agonizing minutes, David stood completely still over the desk. I watched his face transition from utter confusion to pure disbelief, and finally to a profound, crushing sorrow as he read his own daughter's typed words, her calculated deletion schedules, and the upcoming cancellation notice. He looked up at Maya, his voice cracking with a raw pain as he asked her why she would do something so devastating to him and his family. Maya cried out, grabbing his arm, desperately claiming that I was trying to turn him against her, and that she only did it to protect their bond. But David stepped back, his posture completely broken, but filled with absolute resolve, telling her that I hadn't done this to her, she had done it to herself, and that he had raised her to be better than a liar. The silence in the office was absolute as Maya realized that no amount of tears could erase the permanent digital blueprint of her actions. We didn't call off the wedding, but the architecture of our household boundaries changed forever that night. The very next morning, David sat at the desk and manually called every single deleted and deceived guest, offering a deep apology and re-inviting them to the property. Maya was completely stripped of all digital access to our lives, and David made it a non-negotiable condition that she participate in intensive family counseling sessions before her bags were packed for college. Our wedding day turned out to be absolutely beautiful, filled with the warmth of Marcus, Aunt Clara, and every single person who genuinely loved David. Maya sat in the front row, quiet, deeply reflective, and finally understanding that a parent's love isn't a finite resource that disappears when a new chapter begins. It was an incredibly difficult, painful lesson for our family to navigate, but by addressing her manipulation with absolute truth instead of playing into her hidden strategy, we managed to secure our boundaries and protect our new foundation before it could ever be torn apart.